Hey guys, Kevin here, and I have what is probably the most overlooked story of this month, and it is so important. This week, after a march on City Hall by students, Mayor Catherine Pugh, that's right, Mayor Pugh, announced that she is planning to bus thousands of students to Washington later this month for the March for Our Lives. So you have the Mayor of Baltimore exploiting students, using these students to push her left-wing agenda. And that's not even the most outrageous part of the story. Mayor Pugh said Thursday that it would cost $100,000 to provide 60 buses, lunch, and t-shirts for about 3,000 students. Now, guys, we have seen stuff like this before. Back when Obama was elected president, for the inauguration, a lot of these inner city schools bus kids in, and they gave them t-shirts and hats and all kinds of Obama garb. And this is something we see time and time again. The Democrats, they use these schools as indoctrination camps, and they exploit these children, especially these poor inner city schools. And I want you guys to see these statistics here. All right, so let's start by talking about the condition of these Baltimore schools, and then we'll move into the academic failings. So Baltimore schools are often compared to third world schools. The majority of Baltimore schools need renovations from the ground up. Many of these schools do not have access to clean drinking water. They need new plumbing. They need new textbooks, new desks. Pretty much everything needs to be replaced in these schools. Just this year, the governor of Maryland had to authorize $3.5 million in emergency funding to fix the heating systems in Baltimore schools. This was after a protest, and you can see in the picture, where kids were shown wearing coats, heavy winter coats, and breathing steam inside the school. I mean, they were literally freezing inside these schools. But no, we need to spend $100,000 sending these kids to Washington to protest our Second Amendment rights. Let's go ahead and talk about the academic failures of Baltimore schools. So these Baltimore schools have one of the highest truancy ratings in the United States, with over 40% of their high school kids being chronically late or altogether absent. Now, just 16% of 8th graders and 14% of 4th graders were proficient in reading in Baltimore schools. That's according to a 2013 assessment of educational progress. That same assessment showed that out of 39 Baltimore high schools, 13 high schools had zero proficiency in math. That means out of all those 13 schools, not one student scored proficient in math. That is just terrible. Baltimore ranks near the top in per pupil spending for big cities. So this is something we see a lot, guys. These left-wing run cities, these inner cities especially, they complain about funding constantly, but they are so corrupt. These public school systems are so bad, and they focus so much on indoctrination instead of education that they cannot have enough money. There's no amount of money in the world you could give these schools where they would help these kids. The problems are with the family, the problems are with bad teachers and teachers' unions that protect bad teachers, and that's what these kids should be protesting. All right, guys, so here's where the real hypocrisy comes in. Baltimore has some of the strictest gun laws on the books in the United States. They already have an assault weapons ban in Baltimore. They have a high-capacity magazine ban in Baltimore. They have all the laws the left say they want to push on the rest of America. In fact, you can't even own a firearm in Baltimore without it being registered and having a permit to carry it. So with all these laws, you would think that Baltimore would be the safest city on the planet, right? It would just be a utopia because of all these liberal policies. Well, just like with the failing schools, this is also failing Baltimore, with Baltimore seeing a rise in crime like no other city. Baltimore is number 7 on the most dangerous cities list by Forbes. It has a murder rate higher than Chicago and New Orleans. In fact, it is one of the highest murder rates in the nation. So what do these great left-wing thinkers have to say about the crime rate in Baltimore? Well, when asked about a new gun law they just passed, City Councilwoman Mary Pat Clark said, "I believe they're carrying these unregistered guns to protect themselves. But police officers are supposed to be protecting the streets. They shouldn't be carrying guns to protect themselves in Baltimore City. We should be doing the protection. Now, guys, this is cognitive dissonance at its best from the left. This woman is one of the same women who is out protesting the death of Freddie Gray at the hands of the police and saying how all these police were so horrible, but they're supposed to protect the citizens. Also, response times in Baltimore can take up to several hours. So the police are never going to protect you. And we see this time and again in these left-wing cities. They depend on the government so much that they are just helpless. The people live like victims. And this is something I saw in El Salvador. They turned over all their guns to the military. The people there live like victims. Socialists came in, they wrote laws to pretty much make it impossible for you to defend yourself or own a gun. And now people live behind huge walls with barbed wire. They even have broken glass up on the top of their roofs so people can't break into their homes. I mean, this is what you get. You get victimization and total dependence on the state, and the state always fails you. All right, so that brings me back to the kids. These kids who are being exploited by the very left-wing politicians who pass these bad policies that have left their city and schools in such dire straits. Right now, you have dozens of kids each year being shot in Baltimore. One school, this is according to the Baltimore Progress, Excel Academy, had 7 students murdered. And the majority of those murders were committed with illegal guns. So now these kids are going to be bust into Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, where they are going to protest against our Second Amendment rights while promoting the very policies that put their lives in danger every day and have made their city such a dangerous place. But it's not their fault, guys. These kids are brainwashed, okay? And I'm not just talking about the Baltimore kids, although these Baltimore kids, they barely read at a high school level. They have a 14% proficiency in math. Why would anyone take them seriously when it comes to gun policy? These kids don't even probably know how to read the word AR-15, but they are out there protesting our Second Amendment rights? I don't think so. And I'm not just talking about Baltimore kids. Like I said, I think this is true for all these kids. They are all brainwashed. Even the people like David Hogg are being exploited. I know CNN handpicked him because he's a good speaker and he was an antifa wannabe. But let's face it, these kids, just like the grown-up antifa, these mini micro antifa kids, they cannot stand up to a rebuttal against their talking points. These kids, they know nothing about gun policy. They know nothing about gun crime rates or any of these statistics. So that's why when you have David Hogg challenging Alex Jones, he then backs down when Alex Jones invites him on his show. He cannot make a good argument for the very thing that he is being used as a poster boy for. So David Hogg and these kids in Baltimore are being used by the left so that people will have an emotional response. Because that's all the left have nowadays. They want to hurry up and pass gun control through, and they know if they get everybody emotional and riled up, that's the best way to do it. Because if people take time to read these laws, to look at the facts around gun control and how they negatively impact cities and states, nobody would support it. I mean, it's just like Obamacare. They rushed that through, and it's a horrible failure. And this is what the left do now. They don't have anything as far as policies anymore. All their policies are horrible. It's all more welfare state in a country that's already got $20 trillion in debt. It's all emotional arguments and responses like you're a racist or whatever else they try to use to shut down speech and shut down other arguments. And it's tiresome. So I should end this by saying that nothing the left does is organic. You know, these kids, they didn't get up and march out of their classrooms because they support gun control. These kids don't even know what gun control is. They left their classroom because they live in a district that has the highest truancy rating in the United States, and none of them want to be there. But I guarantee you it's beyond that. Look, these kids are being used by this mayor, and I guarantee you that this mayor is being promised huge campaign donations if she just goes out and spends money the city doesn't have to bust these kids to Washington and push this agenda. And that's how the left works. Look, they dominate these inner cities because they spend billions of dollars in these inner cities trying to brainwash people and pushing propaganda. I mean, you had groups like Acorn under Obama that were out there telling people in inner cities that Obama would be the greatest president. He would pay off their mortgage. He would give them phones. I mean, you've seen the videos of this. And then you have them telling the voters that Republicans are racist, that they're going to screw them over, take their welfare. You have groups like the Center for Community Change and the Ford Foundation or Communities for Change NYC that go into these cities and spend millions of dollars trying to push programs for these kids that clearly push a biased political agenda. It's just disgusting. It's something the Democrats have done for decades now. And every single city where the Democrats have dominated, they're just in horrible shape. They're in horrible condition. So guys, I feel bad for these kids, but we really have to push back. We should go do some protests. We should be out there trying to call these kids out or call the people controlling these kids out. Definitely, write op-eds against this mayor, do videos like this, wake people up to this stuff because it is just, like I said, despicable. All right, so I'm out. Guys, like and subscribe to my channel. My current main channel is called InfoWars Stop the Purge. I changed the name just to show solidarity against the YouTube purge. This one is Patriot Punk, or you might be watching me on the Liberty Network, in which case subscribe to all three and definitely watch the videos on the Liberty Network. Dapperton's done a great job with that stuff. So I'm out, guys. Later.